What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of Force Fridays. This is going to be a discussion-based platform where we talk not only about Star Wars theory, which is what we're doing today, but we're also going to talk about Star Wars toys in the same way we kind of talk about the other stuff on Sit Down Saturday. We're going to do character studies. Eventually, we're going to get into the weeds on some stuff, but I don't think everybody's ready for that quite yet, so we're going to slow burn it. So what are we talking about today? Today, we are talking about the key to Episode 9. A lot of people have complained that perhaps this trilogy isn't as connected as the others. I can make counter arguments for that, but that's neither here nor there. For the sake of this discussion, we're going to go out on the limb and say that they are correct. And I will more than admit that this sequel trilogy has some loose threads, and more on that in another video. But what's the focus of the sequel trilogy? Is it Rey? I think that's what we think. I think that's what we were made to think. I think that's how we were led down this road. But I'm suggesting that perhaps it's Kylo. And let me make my point. The question becomes, how do we tie it all together? How do we take this movie and tie in not only the two previous movies for a cohesive trilogy, but the entire saga for a well thought out 9, arguably 11-part story? So what do we have that's the common thread between all of it? That would give us the options, right? Well, we have R2 and 3PO. They make their way through everything, and they could be an element to tie it all together. We have the Skywalkers, which is what this story seems to center around from The Phantom Menace to now, with this movie even having the name in the title. And we have Palpatine, and we know that because of the trailer for The Rise of Skywalker. So that's the three elements that are in your face as being tied through the entire saga. And how do we put these pieces together? And I'm here to suggest that we do it in two ways. Some of this may get spoilery. I'm up on spoilers, but it is my goal to not be spoilery. It is my goal to stay kind of conceptual and not specific. But what we do know from the trailer is that Palpatine is involved in some way, shape, or form. We can assume based on that in the same way, shape, or form he has to be defeated. We know that Rey is our main hero, but now we have at least two distinct villain categories: Palpatine and Kylo. And you can break Kylo down further, but even still, I don't think it would negate the fact that these are the two main villains. One of the ongoing themes of Star Wars is the fall and the redemption. It's a Star Wars formula. It's been there from the beginning. It continues through to today, at least in my opinion. And I think we even see it in Luke. So can we assume that perhaps we should tie this idea to this sequel trilogy? And I am suggesting probably. Therefore, the key would be for Kylo to beat Palpatine. Now, a lot of this remains in mystery because we don't know exactly how Palpatine is coming back or in what manner he's coming back. We've heard some rumors, but I'm going to try not to touch on them. But story element building block wise, that's what we have. But we need to make it mean something, or at least they need to make it mean something for it to have the impact and ultimately for it to matter. And we're getting ready to get into it. So just be warned, this is my theory. These are my ideas. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just fun to talk about. In The Force Awakens, we see Kylo sitting across from the battered helmet of Darth Vader from the Battle of Endor. To that helmet, he says, "Show me the darkness. I will finish what you started." And conceptually, we all look at this and we think that he's well on his way to becoming the full bad guy that they are marketing him to be. After all, he's got a black mask and he's got a red blade. And those are the signs. You don't need Blue's Clues on the case to put it together. But we assume that he's talking to Vader, to his grandfather, and asking his grandfather for assistance in showing him the darkness, to lead him down this path of villainy, to finish what he started, which we assume to be domination and bringing the universe under his thumb and span of control. But that would also mean going full Sith, and you never go full Sith. Wait, sometimes you go full Sith. Neither here nor there. But what does he call him? Grandfather. Not Lord Vader, his Sith name, the name that echoes the philosophies of the darkness. He calls him grandfather. But you could say that his grandfather died when he became Darth Vader and was reborn at the end of Return of the Jedi. And that would mean that he was not talking to Darth Vader, that he was talking to Anakin. And that's what I'm suggesting. I am suggesting that he is talking to Anakin Skywalker, his grandfather, to show him the darkness. Why? What I think would be the most interesting is if Kylo was walking down this dark path purposefully to be put in a position to defeat Palpatine. I will finish what you started. Not bringing the galaxy under your thumb and span of control, but eradicating the Sith and destroying Palpatine. Now, this hinges on the idea that Kylo needs to be a dark side user to get close enough to Palpatine, which would tie directly into some of Palpatine's motivations that I don't want to get into because it's potentially spoiler heavy. But as we know, Palpatine likes to keep new apprentices around, preferably those that are far younger and more powerful, or those that could be a great asset. And for that to work, we have to know a couple things. We have to know that Kylo knows that Palpatine is out there. So that needs to be explained. But we also need to know that Kylo knows that Vader turned back to the light. And we don't have a lot of evidence to suggest that. But what we do have is evidence to suggest that light has always been there. And we'll get into that right after we have the only little measly piece of evidence that I can come up with, which is from the Force Awakens novel by Alan Dean Foster. And in that novel, Snoke says to Kylo, "Such a foolish error of judgment, a momentary lapse in an otherwise exemplary life. Had Lord Vader not succumbed to emotion at the crucial moment, had the father killed the son, the Empire would have prevailed and there would be no threat of Skywalker's return today." And Kylo responds, "I am immune to the light." In 2015, the Disney Store released 12-inch talking figures of characters from The Force Awakens that used lines from the movie. And one of them was from Kylo, who says, "I am immune to the light." By the time the figure was released, September 2015, Rian Johnson was already writing The Last Jedi. And what I'm suggesting is that not only was this in the script, but it may very well have been filmed, and Rian Johnson would have been privy to that information. So he would be writing The Last Jedi with that in mind. Now tie that to the idea that many people from the Lucasfilm creative side have said on numerous occasions that the story regarding Kylo is one of the things that was very clear from the early days on, meaning that it was paramount and key to the overall arcing story of 3 films that they were trying to convey. Now, whether or not we can prove that he knows now doesn't matter, because they can just establish it in the next movie. But it doesn't go against anything in canon that he would know, which is most important. And if he knew, then we can theorize that he might be operating under that guise. And don't get me wrong, I don't say this to suggest that Kylo is an angel. I think there's a lot of darkness in him, and I think it's always been there. In the novel Bloodlines, which I will admit is my favorite Disney Star Wars novel so far, with very few even competing with it, but that's perhaps a story for another time, Leia talks about what it feels like to be pregnant with Ben. And she describes it as to a living band of light that sometimes dimmed and was sometimes thrust through with a vein of darkness. So there's darkness in there. And I think we all see evidence of that. Luke also noticed his darkness. Snoke was involved in the temptations of his darkness. Now, Snoke may end up tying to Palpatine, but we'll have to see how that plays out. But I think some of that darkness is in him for sure, but there's also been light. And I think we see evidence of that as well. Within the same novel, there's a scene where the First Order bombs a New Republic political event. And before the bombing, Leia gets a note written on a napkin that says, "Run." And she was equally as surprised to get the message as she was to get a written message, as writing is not really part of this universe anymore. But we also see established in The Last Jedi by Rian Johnson, who helped with Bloodlines or cooperated in the creation and writing of Bloodlines, that Kylo has a calligraphy set. So Kylo can write. I think this establishes the lightness, let alone his hesitation to destroy Leia in The Last Jedi. So it's there. But I don't want you to think that I think he's an angel. And I think that a lot of what he says in those movies is for real. I also think that a lot of the things that he says that's kind of assumed to be dark may not be dark, but it is real. When he says he wants to end it all, it's time to let old things die. The Jedi, the Sith, all of it. I think he means it. I think he does believe that all of it is to the detriment of the galaxy. And he may not be wrong, but I believe he wants to end it all. And that's it. And that is, at least until I saw this, which is the Sith Trooper that was revealed as a Hot Toy and Black Series upcoming figure that supposedly, according to MakingStarWars.net, is rumored to be a force of troopers directly under Kylo's command. But that's a very specific name. Now, it doesn't negate the point that I'm making, as he may believe he has to go that far in order to achieve the goal. He's been willing to go far in order to achieve this goal. He stood with his father over top of a bridge and said, "I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I'm strong enough to do it." It always felt weird, but it might make more sense if what I'm saying is true. But we also got the who's who in the galaxy from Amazon Prime, which dictates Darth Vader, Darth Sidious, and Darth Maul as Sith with the Sith symbol, and Kylo Ren with a different symbol under the First Order warrior. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's not gonna go Sith, but it is perhaps more evidence that he won't. But if what I'm suggesting is true, if he's purposefully walking this path, perhaps against his own judgment, just to be in the position to kill Palpatine and rid the world of the Sith and the Jedi forever, it would make him a hero. So then that makes us ask, who's Rey? And Kylo may have already told us, you're nothing. You're no one. This isn't your story. And maybe it's not her story. Maybe it's a Skywalker story. A story about family. Now this might get more complicated in a future video, but more on that later. But we've been looking so hard to figure out Rey, we possibly have missed the real story of the sequels, which might be Kylo. Thus, making him and the Skywalkers the key to fulfilling this sequel trilogy and the saga as a whole. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Till next time, take care.